My name is Maxim Cruz. I am a real estate broker, and we are here to bring you March 24th, 2020. The thing that I did not want to talk about, but we are going to talk about it anyways. COVID-19, right? The coronavirus and how it is affecting commercial real estate. So, I'm going to grab my little iPad here. All right. So there's a couple things we are going to cover in this video. The first one is an addendum that was given to us by the Florida Real Estate Board. If you want a copy of that, I will give you my email address at the end. I'm actually going to give it to you right now. Maxim, M-A-K-S-I-M, at maxcruzrealtor.com. You go ahead and email it to me there, and I'll be more than happy to send you out this form. This was done by the Florida Association of Realtors. If you don't have one in your state or wherever you practice, I'll be more than happy to bring it to you. So pretty much this is the coronavirus extension addendum to contract. So there you see it. Extension to contract. So there's multiple clauses in here. First, it's like any other extension, right? You could extend your closing date, your financing period, your inspection period, your title period, your feasibility study, your due diligence, homeowners condominium associations, if you're doing some sort of residential deal, and then you pretty much sign between the seller and the buyer. This is very, very important because right now there's a lot of things that are on hold. So if you have a contract that's in the middle of negotiations or you're in the middle of something, just make sure you get a signed extension. The last thing you want is for that contract to come to the closing date or to come to the commitment date and you don't have any signed agreement, and then all of a sudden the attorneys are doing back and forth legal battles. Trust me, you want to avoid that altogether. So that's very important. Make sure you get a signed addendum. Again, this form has been made, or you could do some sort of signed extension. This is specifically saying because of this whole COVID-19 and a lot of institutions being kind of on a limited workforce capacity, this is the form that we're agreeing to delay and kind of put things on hold for now. So the next thing that I want to cover is a couple of things. One, I heard a great interview with Casey Conway. Casey Conway has over 40 years of commercial real estate experience. So he's lived through the 80s, he's lived through the 90s, he's lived through the 2000s, the dot-com. He went through September 11th and that financial crisis. He went through 2008 and saw everything that happened there. And now he's been, since 2008 until now, he's been keeping track of everything that's happening with his bullish economy and where we are at now. I actually got to meet him in person early in January when we had the CCIM conference here in Florida. So he brought a lot of good points and just took a lot of good stuff. And then at the end, I'm going to finish up with my plan and kind of discuss and share with you what I got going on and some of my ideas. So I already mentioned to you that form. Again, if you want a copy of that, it's Maxim, M-A-K-S-I-M, at maxcruzrealtor.com. I'd be happy to email it out to you. So there's a few topics that Casey talked about, and I'll give you my opinions on it as we go through it. Travel and hospitality. As we know right now, the travel and the hospitality industry are getting hit the hardest. Now, the thing is that already when you look at, for example, the hospitality, the hotels, in this economy that we're in, we were already at a peak, right? Where, hotels are selling at prices that have never been seen before as far as investment properties of, price per door or price per key. So we already kind of a peak, so it wasn't the best sort of investment. Now that the travel industry is getting hit the hardest, it will definitely affect some of the sales price and some of the things going on there. Now, I tend to agree with that. Same thing with transportation. It's funny because he mentioned that he was looking at some future travels and he was checking out some plane tickets, And if you go on most of the websites right now, and I checked this out myself at American Airlines, Delta Airlines, as well as Expedia, travel insurance has been removed as an option for purchase. So you kind of, if you want that refundable seat, or if you want to cancel and get your money back, you kind of have to purchase that higher package anyways. So that was very, very interesting. In my opinion, and his opinion as well, it's probably going to take a couple of months to probably a year or more for both of these industries to kind of bounce back. And a lot of it has to do with the psychology of our human beings, right? A lot of humans are going to be afraid of traveling or afraid of doing this thing until we kind of get this coronavirus thing figured out and say, okay, well, you know, if you do get sick, we do have some sort of ailments for it, or a virus shot or whatever. It's funny because actually last night I watched an interview between Patrick Bet-David and some other specialists, and they said, hey, look, you know, we might come up with a solution in this in record time, but it is still gonna take, you know, 6 to 12 months because it has to go to clinical trials. We don't know what the side effects are. We don't want people to grow a third ear on their forehead because we came up with a solution, but it has all these side effects. So just know that it's gonna take time. From a psychology point of view, humans, we like to be safe prior to anything. So we're probably gonna be like, hey, you know, do I really want to get on a plane? What if this person over there is carrying the virus, but they're not showing any symptoms? If I didn't get it, will I get it, right? So there's a whole kind of getting back from this fear thing that is going to take some time, that is going to impact both the travel and the hospitality. Next, he talked about some retail things. So I want to make this video a little bit short. So I'm trying to stay under 15 minutes, so I'm not going very, very deep into all the things he said. But if you want a link with that, I can post it in the comments and you can go and check it out. The retail, and I would agree with this, agree with him again on this stuff. We have to think of retail as far as the consumer, right? And you have your staple items, which are your necessary items like food, groceries, toilet paper, which everyone is talking about right now. And then you have your discretionary items. These are all the things like the dry cleaners, all these other things that are kind of, you know, affected. You know, a lot of the restaurants are being affected right now. So a lot of the things that he was mentioning in retail is, he believes that the staple, like the grocery stores, the big Walmarts, the Costco's, things of that nature, you know, that real estate is still going to be in there. Some of the resellers, like, for example, Marshall's or Ross, or even the Dollar General, or all these dollar stores which have been around, they sell kind of these items which people buy on a weekly basis or even on a daily basis, so that will probably not get affected. Now, as far as the large retailers that have been in trouble for a long time, you know, the JCPenney, the Macy's, we already saw Toys R Us go out of business. All these other big stores that have so many branches that, you know, with the e-commerce world that has been changing, you know, we might see them affected in some ways. I still believe that stores like, you know, the resellers like the Marshalls and the Ross and those type of stores are gonna be okay. But again, I think the Macy's, we're gonna see something this year, because last year they closed a bunch of stores. So that is gonna give us opportunity. Now, the funny thing with retail is right now, actually the National Guard, along with some hospitals, are actually mobilizing some abandoned or some unused retail spaces, especially in shopping malls, for example, not shopping malls, but kind of these strip centers, to get them into kind of these makeshift, not full hospitals, but makeshift facilities where they can treat patients, because again, the hospitals are running out of room. So there might be some opportunity, if you have a shopping plaza and you have some empty real estate, to get in touch with your local hospitals, get in touch with your local humanitarian relief efforts, things of that nature. What else do we have? We have the urgent care centers, to see if they're willing to kind of lease this space at a temporary commitment sort of things, and if they are looking to get more space. So there's some opportunity with that. Next, he talked about the office markets. Now, here I'd like to add that he didn't really talk about different office types. So, for example, offices, there are different office types. I was involved, and I'm still involved, in office medical sales, which I believe we're going to see an increase in leasing for medical offices. As far as general offices, most of the business here in the United States, at least, they have probably had to take measures to see, hey, how does the work from home really work? Is it a benefit? Are we going to see the same results? So because we're still kind of in that period where we're testing this work from home, and some companies that have never done it are transitioning to it, I agree with him that general office space, some companies will kind of slow down, and at the same time, some companies will actually downsize in space because they'll see, hey, this work from home thing kind of works pretty good. We don't really need 100,000 square feet. Maybe we can get by at 50,000 square feet, have this kind of shared workspace environment, have this kind of work from home 3 days a week, come in for 2 days a week, come in for the necessary meetings, because there have been some studies out there that actually show that giving employees the flexibility to work from home, work with flexible schedules, and only coming to the office in necessary meetings actually improve kind of the productivity, which is very, very interesting. The multifamily, he didn't really jump into a lot of things. He talked about workforce housing and student housing. Workforce housing is everything kind of from these blue-collar workers to even these white-collar workers that are kind of live in this market rent condition. Obviously, there'll be some effect on that in the immediate sense, but again, there has been a need for workforce housing. So overall, we feel that that market is going to be stable. Student housing is very, very interesting. It might get affected in the long term because so many colleges now have had to go to an online platform, and it's going to bring up that argument to say, hey, the last semester of the year, almost the full semester, we had to do it from home. You have so much that goes into the dormitories, the student eating plans, all this other thing. And some students and some parents are going to ask themselves, hey, how effective is it to send my child to college and then have them get all the student housing if they could do it all remotely and get kind of this college remote education? So that's definitely going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on over the next 12 months. He gave some advice to real estate agents. So the 3 things that he said were very important at this time is communication. Don't just sit back. You have to communicate with the banks, communicate with the clients, let them know what's going on. Think strategic, and I'll dive into this a little bit more here. But for example, what he was saying, if you're a residential real estate agent, which kind of goes in line with the Florida Real Estate Board, as of March 20th, the Florida Real Estate Board prohibits all open houses and broker open houses. So right now you kind of need to strategize and say, okay, well, what can I implement as a strategy in my business to still sell real estate, or do I need to shift? And I'll talk about this as I go into my plan into a different type of real estate, right? And then the third thing is agile, being flexible, being agile, understanding that this situation is changing daily. We're getting information on an hourly basis from the CDC and all these other health officials, and we're also getting information from the financial markets and how that's impacting. So again, that's changing. Overall, I believe that things in China are starting to kind of normal out. People are going back to work. People are getting this confidence. And I believe because the economy has been so strong, we're going to kind of have this bounce back that's going to come back. And once people feel confident again to leave their houses in general and all of these lockdowns get lifted, we're going to get back into normality. The other thing that he talked about is the supply chain. So it's funny because they talked about tariffs, right? We've heard a lot of things in the news about the United States and other trades and all the tariffs that have been out there. And he kind of said that, hey, the corporations, the large corporations, they've kind of had to adjust around these tariffs in order to continue doing business. So that's increased some supply chains in some countries like Vietnam, like South Korea, as well as Hong Kong. Not that Hong Kong is a country, but it's increased the supply chain in those markets because, again, some tariffs have been implemented in other areas, so those areas kind of have become not liberty free, but kind of a reduced tariff zone. Same thing with like Panama, that has been kind of the gateway of the Americas for a long time. So there's been this supply chain redistribution, if you want to call it, where no longer are 100% of the things being manufactured and shipped from China, but now you're getting these open trade lines with other countries, right? The other thing that he mentioned is obviously the supply chain. It's a good opportunity to study and kind of say, hey, the pharmaceutical supply chain here in the United States, so much of it has been risked to outside pharmaceuticals. Now, if we want to kind of not nationalize on a government level, but have more corporations that are doing pharmaceutical supply business here, how do we do that? How does this affect real estate as far as, hey, are all of these manufacturing companies now going to need more real estate, more warehousing, more space in order for them to do things, right? Is that an opportunity for us here in real estate? And one of the last things that he has is he said, go back and study history. And I actually did a post about this on Monday. Today, what's today? I don't even know what day of the week it is. But I did a post about this. I believe it was Monday of last week or middle of last week, that I said, hey, just go back and study history and look at what's happened with viruses. He's saying look at what's happened with viruses and also what's happened with real estate, right? Where are the opportunities in times of crisis like this, right? And he mentioned the measles and kind of what happened as a virus and that, and kind of what happened with the hospitals, all that thing, and then kind of how we saw a bump in hospitals and more hospitals needing to expand because of the measles crisis, and then that's actually how the hospitals grew over time. So let's get into my plan, and hopefully this will allow you to lay out some of the things if you have any sort of similar investments or if you have any sort of similar issues that you're going through. So first things first, right? I do have investments in real estate, right? As some of you know, I have some videos that talk about investing into multifamily real estate. Starting using FHA loans. You can go and check that out on my YouTube channel. So again, right now I have an interesting mix of Section 8 rentals as well as workforce housing. So most of my rental units are actually rented at slightly below market value. And most of my properties, that way that we have designed them, is we have a combination of Section 8 and workforce housing. And strategically, this is what my wife and we had kind of planned, not necessarily thinking about this virus situation, but just thinking of economics overall. I don't know how Section 8 works in all of the states, but at least in Massachusetts, since like 2001, 2003, Section 8 kind of got re-evaluated is the word that I'll use, and there was a lot more emphasis placed on the tenant. Now, what I mean by this is when the tenant moves in, they are actually responsible for the security deposit. So the tenant needs to have those funds up front. The second thing that happens is Section 8 actually does a pre-move-in inspection to make sure that everything is in compliance and the apartment is in good condition. Also, they frequently do annual or biannual inspections to make sure the apartment is upkept. And what I've noticed is they actually go in and in the report, they'll put in there, for example, tenant hung a TV on the wall. That's damaged by the tenant, because if they leave and there's any holes in the place, they're not going to come and charge me back. And I have a case saying, hey, when you moved in, Section 8 did a report. Here's an inspection from 2 years ago where you hung a TV on the wall. You moved and you didn't patch those holes. So guess what? I'm going to charge you, whatever, $100 to patch and paint those things. The other thing that we did interestingly is, for example, some of our properties, let's say our mortgage payment, which includes our principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, was roughly, let's say it was $1,800. and the income that we had coming in for that property was, let's say, between the two units was, 1,200 on one side and another 1,600 on another side. What we actually did was we actually figured out, okay, this 1,600, let's try and place the Section 8 tenant here because that rent is almost guaranteed. So that way, if somebody moves out, and this 1,200 is no longer available, we could still pay the mortgage in full, or as far as our personal investments and what's going on. On the brokerage side of things, I am doing weekly calls as well as email that transition period that we're extending their contracts for closing. And anyone that's been here in the past, just letting them know what's going estate agents that might be looking to relocate to a different real estate companies, that are looking to have some sort of online tools that they want to use because the brokers that they've been at is kind of antiquated and all they do is everything kind of door to door. So we're looking to grow our team. The other thing that and this is in all 52 states, just so you know, this is all throughout the United States. The other thing that we are working on is virtual showings. So the virtual showing, sorry, I think we got cut off there a little bit on Instagram because I had a call coming in. The virtual showings, this is an opportunity, right? Again, the Florida Real Estate Board has shut off any sort of broker open houses. But as I posted on a video previous this week on YouTube, as well as LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, having video is very, very important. So right now, I'm actually reaching out to property owners and as well as real estate brokers and telling them, hey, if your property is on the market, I'm willing to go there by myself because, again, no one is kind of utilizing the property. It's vacant. Do you have a lockbox on site? I'll go in, I'll put on some gloves, we'll shoot some video, we'll showcase your property, we'll get attention to it, right? So again, that's virtual showings as well as video marketing. And then the last thing that I'm focusing on is studying opportunities. As I mentioned here, if the supply chain is going to initial slow down and then surge, if there's going to be more need for hospitals or certain office types to go in there, where am I studying? What do I need to learn about, for example, warehousing or distribution, or certain thing with like medical manufacturing facilities, certain thing like refrigerated warehouse that keeps some of these vaccines if they can't really live at room temperature, right? So all of these things are important for me to know and understand. And because I've been specializing in multifamily investment properties and other sort of cash flowing investment properties, now is a good opportunity for me to study and say, hey, there's an opportunity that's gonna come for this trade and warehouses are gonna be on the rise. I don't know if I already mentioned this on a previous video, but here in South Florida, we are actually lacking about 2 million square feet of warehousing. That's right. We need an additional 2 million square feet of warehousing. That's why if you're driving around South Florida, you might see some more sites being built as far as warehousing, distribution areas. Amazon has come in and built a couple of places itself here in South Florida, so we're seeing that, right? So where are those opportunities available, whether it's vacant land, whether it's rezoned areas that allow for those type of things to come in, right? Where do those opportunities exist? So again, I'm gonna write my email down here real quick. It is Maxim, M-A-K-S-I-M, at M-A-X Cruz Realtor.com, okay? maxcruzrealtor.com. Also, I respond very well by WhatsApp and text message. You could text message me directly at 786-592-8102. So then again, that's WhatsApp or text, okay? So again, this is the best way to reach me, Maxim at maxcruzrealtor.com. If you want a copy of that addendum, again, this is specific for the state of Florida. But again, if you're somewhere in Texas or California or Washington State and you want to utilize that form, make sure you check with your broker of record, make sure you check with an attorney. I'm sure they can formulate something similar if they haven't done so already, but go and get that done and make sure you execute that form so you can extend your contracts.